in the flatland like a man on the run, riding down Highway 61. Sides of the roads all lined with fields, nothing but sunset in the windshield. Feel it as soon as I ride into town. This is where I go to slow down. Miles and miles of soybeans and corn. I'm in the place where the blues was born. About a mile from the big muddy river, place I'll always remember. Cabin on the lake and a fishing pole. Forever here I'll rest my soul. I can feel my worries drift away from being out in the sun all day. No matter where in the world I go, I'll always find home on the banks of that oxbow.
What's up, guys? Brad Chappell here at Crappie Connection at the Grizzly Jig Show 2022. Guys, it's cold outside, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
Yes.
This is one to definitely remember. One of the things I definitely thought of you two guys when I thought of this show today, and it's breaking down a new body of water. And both of you guys have traveled all across this great country of ours and all these great different bodies of water. And I kind of want to dig in and, you know, when somebody goes to a new body of water, what should they start out looking for? And I'm going to bounce it between both of you guys because the experience here is unreal.
Oh, you know, I always like to stop at a bait shop and just find out what kind of fish is there, what kind of size fish we're looking for. You know, because the average guy will tell you, you know, what's going on. And, you know, then we take a map, just a regular map like I said, the old days, that's all we had.
That's right.
And I still carry these everywhere I go because I like to put my hands on them in the motel room, sit there at night and study the map and the contours. But, you know, on an average, I go up the river as far as I can go. I'm a muddy water guy, and I'm a shallow water fisherman by, you know, heart. So I like to go up the river as far as I can go most of the time and start there. And then, you know, you got to play the seasons of the year, you know,
Right.
fall, winter, summer patterns. You got to kind of have a little knowledge of that. But, you know, basically, we fish. We just fish and we move, and you move a lot. And crappie fishing, if you don't move a lot, you usually ain't gonna catch a whole lot. So you got to move a lot. You got to change up bait colors to match water, you know, and sometimes that don't pay off because they'll bite the craziest stuff you throw out there. But I would say start up the rivers, start up into the lake, and I like to fish the west side most of the time early in the spring because it warms up a little better. And, you know, that's just my thinking, you know, and and a lot of years it's paid off, a lot of years it costs dearly because those fish do, you know, in like the wintertime, the fish will move shallow in the afternoons when that water column warms up. They'll move up and down, and people say, well, the fish moved. They ain't moved. They're just moving up and down. But you know, this guy right here, he fishes on some big lakes up there where he's at. And I've been fishing against this old fella him a good many years. We were both young fellas at one time. But what do you look for? I want to know your secret.
Well, and I'm the same way, just about. That's the reason I brought this map, is because we always get a map. If that lake has a map on it, we get it. We like to go in the springtime to the most fertile water that we can find.
Right.
So that's going to go up as high as you can. Now, a lot of times if you got a rain, that fertile water, you're going to get down below the mud and all that stuff.
Right.
But in the spring, we like to go to the fertile water and then work our way back down until we find the fish that way.
I know we're looking at springtime, so this is definitely a early season kind of show. This one will be. So guys that are traveling, let's say to, we'll pick any body of water. We'll do Ross Barnett, my home lake. And you're saying you would start upriver for the warmest water, more likely.
Yes, or on like Ross Barnett, and I've only been there one time when you and I went.
Yeah.
But I think it's got a lot of deep channels in it.
Yep.
So them fish are moved in that deep channel. So I'm gonna start looking at them ledges, and I'm gonna start looking on the flats where they're gonna come back out. Because if you take a lake like I think that one is, that lake is a little different because it's more deep channels, and then fish are going to come out into the stump fields, and they're going to come out of the channel. In the wintertime, they're going to go down in that channel, and then they're going to come out. So with that lake, I would probably, if I was first day I got there, I might not go as far up in the shallow water. I'm going to try to hit more of the deep spots, the deep holes, and then see where those fish are coming out of those deep holes.
Outlaw?
Well, I agree with what Charlie's saying all the way, you know, because I'm an upper end to mid-lake guy anyhow.
Right.
If you see me on the lower end fishing in a tournament, you can about bet from there up it ain't that good for me. And I ain't saying that it's not good, but it's not good for me because of my style of fishing. And you know, on the lower end of the lakes, I look for suspended fish more so than anything, you know, 'cause especially early spring when they move up in the water column, because they might be sitting in 60 foot of water and they move up to 13, 14 foot because that water warms in the spring. They moving up and they're gonna get ready to do their thing, you know, and shoot to the bank when the water gets in the right temperature, because it's all temperature and moon phase from that point on. And you know, I play the moon too, full moon, like full moon in March. Them fish are gonna be on the bank somewhere if the water temperature is right. Usually about 4 days before, 4 days after. On Santee Cooper, my home lake, in the first week in March, we looking at 18 to 20 inches of water.
Do you find, you know, we'll talk about this moon phase a minute here too, because I've had people actually cancel trips and say, man, it's a full moon. I don't want to fish during that full moon.
Well, dead on the moon, I know one example is like brim fishing, dead on the full moon. You can find a brim bed and you can flip in there and you'll catch them, but they'll move the cork and wall it a little bit. They're not as aggressive as they are 3 days before or 3 days after. And the crappie is the same way. Everything works on the moon. You take a moon that moves the tides of the ocean, causes people to kill and rob.
Right.
I mean, full moon plays a big deal on the earth, and you know, move the tides in the ocean and stuff. But a lot of people think, well, it don't hurt the fishing. Well, it does hurt the fishing, and if you play the moon right, you can increase your catches. And I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm not going to fish just because, not fish because of the moon.
Right.
But I know what to do when the moon's full. I know which way to go and what to look for, and it seems to run, you know, the effect in it, to me, the full moon more in the spring of the year affects the fish than it does summer, winter, or fall, because they set up in their patterns, that's where they're going to be.
That's their mating season, their breeding season.
Their breeding season. I really work the moon pretty good. Yep.
Charlie, what about the moon with you?
I don't, because with me, every time I go fishing is where the tournament at.
Yeah.
And I can't determine, I mean, they're not going to cancel that tournament because it's a full moon.
Right.
So I have to find the fish in whatever's happening. If it's freezing, if it's sleeting, if it's rain, if it's 100 degrees, if it's full moon or no moon, I still got to find the fish. So now I might try to pattern them a little different. You know, I'm going to try to slow down. You know, if it's a full moon, like Whitey was saying, they're not going to be as aggressive.
Yeah.
So you're going to have to fish a little different. But I'm going to, whenever the tournament is, I'm going to be there fishing.
Yeah, yeah. You know, we're talking about these maps, and, you know, I actually won a tournament years ago, buy a map and fished a spot that I never even fished before by picking out. But what are some of the things that you look at when you look at, you know, a contour map of a lake? What kind of really says, you know what, I need to go check that spot out? It's, let's say, pre-spawn. And what are you looking for when you're looking at a map, let's say, during pre-spawn period?
Well, when I open that map up, first thing I'm looking at the upper end. But first thing I'm looking at all the laws to go with the lake, you know, where you can run, where you can't. Because a lot of lakes we fish, you can't run just anywhere, you tear up stuff. But that's the first thing for safety. But other than that, I look at the upper end, I start watching the channels, because a lot of times in March, they won't be in the creeks all the way. They'll be in the mouth of the creeks where they're gathering, getting ready to move in when the temperature gets right. And you know, I look at the ditches, and it don't take much. It don't take much. Sometimes just a 6-inch drop, and it runs in there for 2 city blocks. That's what they're on. And they use these ditches and little creek channels as highways to move in and out.
Yep.
And also with your bait fish, the bait fish run them channels too. You know, it's just part of nature. Why they do that, I don't know, but it works. Check the ditches is the first thing I'm gonna do. Points, and then in the spring of the year, crappie can mess your head up bad, because everything that you think that you know about the lake or fishing period, they're gonna do something else.
Yeah.
And the reason they do it is you overlook something. You overlook water clarity, you overlook the temperature of the water, wind direction, just simple little things that people don't believe, you know, if it's blowing out the north, they don't bite as much. Well, and blowing out the east, they bite the least.
Right.
That's true stuff.
Yeah.
You can watch the wind change on a lake, and you can watch that wind. If it's blowing out the east and it swings back around to the south or something, you can tell the bite picks up. I've seen it too many times. So, you know, wind direction and places that you watch the weather forecast 2 days before the tournament, you start watching the wind, and you try to pick you out a place on that map to where you're going to be out of the wind on tournament day.
Yeah.
Because if you got big fish somewhere hung up and you can't, you know, get to them, you done wasted the whole week.
Right.
And that's happened to us a lot of times over the years. You couldn't get to
So
the fish.
you're trying to prepare for the conditions coming.
Well, I always expect the worst, and anything other than that's good.
Yeah. Right.
Well, and I do the same thing. If I'm out looking, I'm watching my radar and watching what's the wind going to be doing. You know, where's this bluff, where's that one? You know, the one just here, ACT was down on Sardis when that tornado went through.
Yeah.
You know, and we found a place for the bluff where it was coming. The bluff blocked it all, and I was able to fish all day.
Yeah.
If I hadn't looked at the radar and looked at my map or my compass to make sure where the wind was coming, I wouldn't have been able to fish. There was only one little section of that whole lake that you could fish.
Yeah. So I even think, you know, guys that are preparing to go down to any body of water, they say, well, all right, I'm going to be down there this coming Saturday and Sunday. Look at these maps and kind of pick out an area that's going to be protected, because springtime, especially anywhere I've ever fished, you can count on the wind.
Yeah.
It's going to blow.
March is the month for it, and you know, most of April. And tournament day, it's going to blow every tournament day. That's just the way it is.
Yes, it is.
It's set up for that for some reason.
And there's a reason they're selling kites in stores in the springtime.
Yeah, no doubt, no doubt.
They don't sell them in the summer.
But you know, on a new lake, I like new lakes. Me and Charlie was talking about it before we come up here. We don't fish enough new lakes anymore. The tournament trails seem to hang on the same
Right.
pattern. I like the new lakes because I seem to do better on new lakes.
Yeah.
Because when you fish in lakes that you're familiar with, you habit. You
Yeah.
know, your creatures of habit anyhow. So you're gonna go back to places you've caught them before.
Yeah.
You've seen people win tournaments there, and you overlook a lot of good stuff that if you just hit the lake and never been there before, you would fish. And you know.
You would use this kind of knowledge to.
Exactly, but being creatures of habit, man, you overlook so much good stuff on these lakes. And today with the technology we got, we can catch fish just about anywhere, anyhow we go.
Yeah.
And you know, all 4 seasons of the year. So the map is a good starting tool on any lake, but showing you stump fields, drops, you know, fish attractors. A lot of people don't understand these fish attractors are there for a reason. And sometimes you pull up on them and they eat up the fish, and everybody ride by them.
Yeah.
You know, ride back by them and they eat up the fish.
We won a tournament on our home lake on Truman on conservation brush piles. The Pilates come by and has seen us fishing over there, and he says, "What are you doing fishing that old conservation bed?" We'll show you at the weigh-in.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah, 'cause most people don't fish them. I mean,
No.
they ride by them. You know, they say, well, I
They're
don't,
overfished.
I don't want nobody to see me fishing that thing, you know.
Yeah.
But I don't care what they see me doing, as long as I'm catching fish. And the thing about crappie fishing is they'll be in any depth of water, any season of the year. I've seen them as early as February on Santee be in 2 foot of water, and it'd be cold weather, but it's in a creek back there, with the back of the creek is done warmed up, you know, the wind blowing in it, the warm water back there in the back. So, you know, you don't overlook nothing. You fish everything you come to, and you fish it thorough. And once you go to catching fish, pay attention how them fish are biting, how the hook's being popped in their mouth and stuff, because that makes a big difference, how they're feeding.
Well, explain that. What are your thought when it comes to that?
Well, to me, when I catch one that's hooked in the upper lip or whatever, he's feeding. He's ready to go.
He's mad.
He's mad. He'll hit anything in there. When you go to catch them in the bottom lip, they're not biting as hard to me.
What do you do?
Well, I don't do nothing. There's nothing I can do. I change colors and all. I sometimes tweak what color they want more of. And you know, that goes back to reading about the lake on these maps and websites, seeing what these fish are actually feeding on. What they're feeding on: gizzard shad, thin fin shad, crawfish. Like Santee Cooper's a big crawfish lake. You know, what color they're eating on, and the natural forage for the fish. And if you get a fish that's got it hung down in his throat, every time you catch one, you're doing 2 things. He's killing the bait, sucking it in, or you waiting too late to set the hook.
Right. Yeah. He's swallowing it at that point.
You holding, you hesitating.
Charlie, another little tip that you would give somebody trying to go to a new body of water.
you know, like I said, in the springtime, I'm going to go up. But then you got when you're talking about going up as far as you can in these creek channels, you also need to have enough deep water there. You know, they're going to be in those shallows, but them fish in the wintertime are going to be in the deeper water. They're not going to be suspended in it, but they're going to be in the deeper water. But so if there's no deep water close, then they're not going to move up there yet until that water starts warming up.
Yeah.
So when you start, you don't want to go all the way up. If you go all the way up and there's no place for them to stay,
No staging area to
right.
say. And those are usually found on any of these contour maps. I mean,
Yeah.
give me a little story on a good tournament that you fished that you found a spot just off of a contour map. I know it might take you a minute to come across both of you fellas, but you know, I've got one from Grenada. I'll kind of tell, and it's, you know, Magnolia Crappie Club's been around a long time, and I won a tournament up there probably, I guess, about 10 years ago. That the wind was howling out. We pre-fished, got totally blown out that night of, and I picked a spot out over at near Turkey Creek. I know both of you know that area real well as well. But we found it off of a contour map, and it was a ditch. And it said, you know, this is the only spot that we can fish. It was blowing 25 to 35. And just kind of circled it. Didn't pre-fish it at all. First fish was a 285. And we stayed in that one little ditch and wound up, and at that time we caught 1942, which was Magnolia's biggest stringer in their history, off of a contour map. So I definitely want to tell everybody to think about these contour maps, and they can pay off. Not only tournaments, but just success on the water.
Just to be fishing.
Yeah.
You know, you won't be successful if you and you're just a weekend fisherman. You want to be successful. You want to go out there with good equipment and good knowledge and fish, and don't never be scared of changing areas or colors and depths, because you know the fish change hour by hour. But one tournament we done well on, where we won the state championship in Alabama on the Alabama River 3 times, me and Mike Parrott, and I kind of stumbled on the place one day. Cause the river was flood stage. Every time we won it, the river was out the banks, like Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. Then it dropped back down, and we found this one little corner. And everybody thought it was too shallow for fish to be in there. Well, I found a little ditch going in it, and the first 2 or 3 fish I caught in their practice was over 2 pounds. So we went down the lake and fished in some open water stuff. And every time we won, we'd go back up there about 9 o'clock. So you know, we ended up winning the tournament every time in that one little pocket, and it was off the river. And we never seen another boat. We heard boats go by down through the trees and stuff by us and all, but they couldn't see we was back in this little corner. But it was just a little pocket off the main river. When the water come up, the water went over the trees, over the bank, down in this pocket. And then when it fell back, you know, fish stayed there.
What do you think? Why were they staying there in your mind?
Well, one thing, in the spring of the year, it was warm back there.
Right.
And the water fell so quick they couldn't get out.
Right.
And it was just one little old ditch to get in there. And once you got to the ditch, you could put 8 rods down, and it was on fire from there all the way to the back of that little channel. And you know, one other fella found it a couple of years later, and once they found it, it was all over with. But it was old Caps, he come in there.
That old guy.
But I had 3 championships out there before he got there, so we had 3 years of good fishing there, and 4th place in the Classic that year come out of there. But you know, most of these lakes has got hills and ditches, because you got to remember they was all either backed up over countrysides or whatever, and low spots. So I hunt the hills, the ditches, and on Santee Cooper in the swamp, you know, we catch fish up there all winter long. I don't care how cold it is, in 4 or 5 foot of water. People say, well, how you catch them in that kind of water? I said, well, they don't leave. Well, they don't go back to the river. I said, it's 30 miles back to the river. They're not going to swim out of this swamp to get there. They just going to hunt them another little spot that's a little bit deeper than here, and they're gonna sit there. And when you find them, it's just all you can catch. And it's just knowledge and knowing. But the knowledge of knowing can hurt you sometimes on a lake, because you know too much.
Yeah.
And you don't take no chances of looking for new stuff.
Yeah.
And then you run out of places to fish on tournament day. So, you know, and I fish more pleasure fishing nowadays than I do tournaments, but I still use the tournament education to fish every day.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I've learned a lot over the years. And so, get them maps and do some checking, start at the bait shops, talking to people, talking to the locals around the campground and all. And you know, you ain't asking them to show you where to fish. You're just asking them, you know, what are these fish holding on, what depth of water, stuff like that, what size fish you looking for.
Just do some preparation. I know Charlie does a lot of preparation before you go somewhere.
Yeah. what follow up on what Whitey said about the Alabama River, a lot of that, what I found, when you get them in them little creeks or little cuts, he made the statement that the river was up. Well, went down. Well, them fish moved out of that channel because of all that current.
Exactly.
And he moved, but they moved back in there because of the dead water.
Yep.
And until they get shallow enough they can't get out, they're going to stay there.
Yeah. Yep.
And to me, that's a lot of reason that I found a lot of fish that way. But on those river systems, you know, we won the Tom Bigby. There's only two, I think us and George Parker were the only one that we seen fish in the river. But we found eddies half the size of this building that was full of brush. And we got in there in shallow water. Well, them fish was back out of that.
Right.
So, you know, for us, we've been real lucky on river systems because doing exactly what he said he just did.
Yeah, I've got several spots on the Barnett that I know if we've got a lot of current in the river where it pushes those fish to escape that current. And once that current kind of, you know, goes back down, they'll go back to that river system and stay out in the river.
And you know, with all that being said and done, you got to also follow some bait fish too. You got to you got to have something there to draw fish. The flood waters are going to push them in certain spots. If a bait fish got nothing to do with that, but on average, if the water's right, you look for the shad flipping and the bait, you know, and what they're eating. And if you ain't got no bait there, you ain't gonna have many fish.
But don't you think the bait fish is moving in there out of the current also?
Oh yeah, they moving too. I mean, everything's moving to get out of that current. When you have them big floods and that thing's running 20, 25 mile an hour and floating houses down the river, everything runs to the eddy spots, getting behind something. And you know, even in the river, when it slows down, you go target them big stumps and stuff because them fish will still be sitting right dead behind that stump. You won't be on the upside because he's been positioned back here and he's just comfortable there.
Yeah, they're lazy like me.
Yeah, they don't, I mean, other than that, he got to sit there and continuously do that. But if he gets behind that big structure, he can sit there and rest himself, you know, and pick off something when it comes by to eat. So, you know, you don't overlook nothing crappie fishing. If you overlook one little thing, it could cost you the tournament.
It's all puzzles, isn't it?
A lot of puzzles.
We had one stump at Darnell that was in the river that about that big around. And every year we went down there, we'd go back there and we'd catch one or two, in that tournament, we'd catch one or two big black crappie off of that stump every time. And that was the reason. It was in the current.
I'm going to get a map out and you show me where that one is?
Sure. But yeah, a lake that sets up that we changed and used the map a lot is Perry Lake, Kansas. Travis and I fished that lake twice and we won both of them. One of them, we won it as far up the creek as you go. The other one, you could see the dam where we was at. And we found the Concord, Travis found it, the first one, and I found the second one. Down by the dam, the channel come around and there was no fence rope. And then probably 15, 18 foot of water come up, full of brush. Right behind that, that was before we had our power poles, we was in shallow enough water, we was putting the trolling motor down to hold us in the wind, and we was corking to that fence rope and won the tournament. And then when we come back that fall, it was just the opposite. We went up the creek as far as you could go. I got up in there pre-fishing, and there was little holes 20 foot deep, but then right off of them fish was coming up. And we won both of them tournaments, one of them as far as you could go up and one of them down, but I found all of that off the map.
That's awesome.
Another thing you don't overlook on them river systems is them sandbars. The current makes these big sandbars and stuff on the curves and the turns and all. And we've done very well on the back side, the low side of them sandbars where it's eddy back there.
Right.
I mean, it ought to be 2 foot here and it ought to be 15, 18 foot behind it. And we fish up to them sandbars and around the edge of it and done real good. So don't overlook them sandbars and drop-offs either. Oh, sir.
Well, I'll show you guys, this is some of the new crappie connection apparel I got on here from the hat. You know, we're very proud about these. Another thing that I especially had to design for is anti-glare on the inside lid here. You know, fishing out in the sun, you need something to kind of protect you on the glare besides sunglasses. And also the Crappie Connection hoodies here, you can just contact us on Crappie Connection on the Facebook or wherever and get you some of it. Man, I can't thank you both of you guys enough to be on the show today.
Enjoyed it.
Yes, sir.
It's a world of knowledge here sitting, and I can't thank you enough, and I'm sure the viewers think the
I hope
same.
the viewers listen good. I hope you forget everything we said.
It's kind of nice talking to my old buddy here.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
ain't talked to him for a couple of years.
Man,
I've always felt real good when I got in the tournament day, and I see both you guys sitting around me. So I'm like, yeah, I did something right on this
Yeah.
one. I can see the champs.
when the sun comes up and I look around and see 2 or 3 fellas, I know. I said, well, I look at old Paradise. We in the wheelhouse. We close.
Yep,
we close.
that's exactly right.
Yep.
Like and subscribe, guys. Till next time, Brad Chappell here.
Charlie Bunting.
Whitey Outlaw.
Holla.
About a mile from the big muddy river, place I'll always remember. Cabin on the lake and a fishing pole. Forever here I'll rest my soul. I could be